In 1967, East Side High School in Paterson, New Jersey, was one of the top schools in the country. Joe Clark, a teacher there, was known for his creative teaching style. He built strong relationships with students by combining kindness with healthy competition. One morning, his class was interrupted when Frank, another teacher, told him the union was holding an emergency meeting without them. Feeling ignored, Joe barged into the room and confronted the board. He accused them of abandoning his reform ideas and giving in to political pressure. Frustrated with his constant outbursts, the board reassigned him to an elementary school. But fate wasn't done with him yet. This is Lean on Me. 2 decades later, East Side High had fallen apart. The once proud school was now marked by graffiti, violence, and fear. Students bullied teachers, roamed the halls unchecked, and carried drugs and weapons. Few passed basic skills tests, and only 38% graduated. The crisis drew the attention of Mayor Bottman, who worried the state would take control of the school. If graduation rates did not climb to 75%, the takeover would be certain, and his re-election chances would collapse. Frank, now a school supervisor, and Mr. Rosenberg, the school board lawyer, decided the only solution was to bring Joe Clark back. At first, Bottman rejected the idea, calling Joe unstable. But with no alternatives, he eventually gave in. Frank and Rosenberg approached Joe at the elementary school where he was working and offered him the principal's position at East Side. Joe refused, saying the mayor cared only about politics, not students. Frank pressed him, reminding Joe that he had not yet completed his mission as a teacher. He urged him not to waste his vision and passion. After reflecting on Frank's words, Joe finally agreed to return to East Side High. The very next day, he walked through its doors as the new principal. What he saw shocked him. The school had fallen into decay. Wasting no time, he gathered the teachers and staff. Standing before them, he made it clear that he was in charge and the only voice of authority. Joe demanded a list of students involved in crime, drugs, or other serious offenses. He ordered guards to repaint the graffiti-covered walls, with punished students assisting in the work. He assigned Mr. Darnell, the English teacher, to serve as assistant football coach. Guards were placed in every hallway to help teachers stop fights and maintain order. Most importantly, Joe told the teachers to prepare students for the next standardized test. The pass rate needed to jump from less than 40% to 75%. The urgency of this challenge made everyone realize how much was at stake. When preparations were complete, Joe held a school assembly. The students on the troublemaker list were placed on stage. As he entered, Joe spotted Kanisha, a former elementary student who once looked up to him. She was bright but burdened with personal struggles. Joe called for silence, but the students ignored him. When he ordered the troublemakers to sing the school song, they mocked him. Convinced they were beyond saving, Joe expelled all of them, nearly 300 students. He then told the remaining students that their learning would no longer be disrupted. Security escorted the expelled students out, leaving the rest of the school in stunned silence. Joe warned the others that they could share the same fate if they refused to change. The atmosphere shifted instantly, from chaos to controlled discipline. That evening, Joe met with parents. Leona, the mother of an expelled student, led the protest. At first, many parents sided with her. Joe stood his ground and explained that he had removed 300 in order to save 2,700. He spoke about protecting the majority from the influence of drugs and violence, and promised that he would not let the school collapse. His speech turned most parents to his side, though Leona remained furious.
Dare you talk to these people
Give
about
our children some pride!
The next morning, Joe found Thomas Sams, one of the expelled students, waiting outside his office. Sams pleaded for another chance, claiming he had done nothing wrong. Joe saw through the lie and took him to the roof for private talk. On the roof, Joe called him a coward for hiding the truth from his parents. He warned that drugs would destroy him slowly. Then he pushed further, saying if Sams truly wanted to die, he should jump. Terrified, Sams refused and broke down, admitting he wanted to live and change. Recognizing his sincerity, Joe gave Sams a second chance, but with one condition. If he failed again, he would be expelled permanently. Sams accepted, grateful for the opportunity to prove himself. Later that day in the cafeteria, Joe moved from table to table, watching the students and offering advice. He was pleased to see some making an effort, like Ray, who wore a suit, while others such as Sams and his friends still dressed carelessly. When Joe noticed a group of boys harassing a girl, he ordered them to stand and criticize their appearance in front of everyone. As punishment, he made them sing the school song. He also reminded the room that no one was allowed to move or speak while the song was being sung. During the song, Darnell bent down to pick up trash. Joe scolded him in front of the entire cafeteria and sent him to the principal's office. He also realized that many students did not know the lyrics. As further punishment, he announced that from now on every student must be ready to sing the song at any time or face strict consequences. After the cafeteria incident, Joe met with Mrs. Elliott, the music teacher, to explain the new rule. Elliott accepted the decision, but asked to continue preparing students for an upcoming choir concert in New York. The students had been practicing Mozart, and she wanted their work to be recognized. Joe refused. Their argument grew heated when Elliott accused him of rejecting any opposition. Joe fired her immediately and cancelled the concert, insisting that students focus on the test. He reassigned music duties to Mrs. Powers, the school pianist.
Mrs. Powers, I want it quiet in here right now.
Back in his office, Joe was confronted by Darnell, who was furious. He argued that Joe had treated him without respect, and reminded him that he was also a teacher deserving recognition. The argument ended with Joe suspending Darnell, who stormed out and slammed the door. Joan, the vice principal, urged Joe to reconsider. She said Darnell was more than a teacher, and that others often struggled to understand Joe's decisions. Joe replied that being misunderstood was exactly what he wanted. Weeks later, the practice exam day arrived. Students worked hard while teachers monitored closely. Joe sent Joan to the school board to collect the results immediately because he refused to wait. The school was filled with tension and expectation. Not long after, during a student presentation for the local press, chaos erupted in the cafeteria. A previously expelled student had sneaked back into the building and attacked Ray with a knife.
Come on, old man. I've been waiting for this.
Come on.
Joe restrained the attacker and demanded to know how he had entered. Security admitted that someone inside may have let him in. The incident forced Joe to act again, so he ordered all school doors locked and chained to prevent outsiders from entering. The decision drew sharp criticism and sparked debate across the community. Amid this turmoil, Joe also noticed that Kenesha had become sad and withdrawn. Once a bright student, her grades had dropped after she lost a stable home, and her mother no longer wanted her there. Determined to help, Joe asked Joan to join him in visiting Kenesha's mother. The mother explained that she had given birth to Kenesha as a teenager and had sacrificed her own youth to raise her. Now she wanted to rebuild her life, but felt unable to do so while caring for her daughter. She admitted she still loved Kenesha, but believed sending her to child services would be better. Joe proposed a solution. He promised to help the mother find stable work and housing if she brought Kenesha home and supported her education. She agreed, and their relationship slowly began to heal. Meanwhile, the issue of the chained doors reached the media and caused public outrage. Leona seized the opportunity and filed a formal complaint with the school board. Frank warned Joe that his extreme methods were backfiring. He explained that Leona was organizing a movement to remove him, and that the fire chief was supporting her because of safety violations. Frank also reminded Joe that he often pushed people away, even his own wife. To ease tensions, Frank sent apology letters to Elliott and Darnell, saying respect had to go both ways. Darnell was eventually rehired, though Joe's clashes with officials continued. The conflict escalated when the fire chief arrived at the school with reporters for an inspection. Joe confronted him, swinging his baseball bat as a threat,
You and your TV friends here.
and forced him to leave. Joan expressed concern about his combative style, but Joe ignored her as usual. Joe's confidence was shaken when Ray, one of the more promising students, came to say goodbye. Ray explained that the constant pressure and harsh environment had become too much. Losing such a talented student made Joe realize that his methods were driving some students away. Not long after, Joe caught Sams and his friends in the bathroom. Expecting trouble, he told them to sing the school song. To his surprise, they performed it in a choir style they had learned from Mrs. Powers. Impressed, Joe praised her and ordered that version to be taught to all students.
Take a bow, Mrs. Powers. You've rewritten our alma mater.
When the practice test results arrived, the outcome was grim. The school scored only 33%, far below the 75% target. Joe gathered the teachers in the gym and accused them of not working hard enough. He demanded greater effort and introduced new measures. He proposed tutoring sessions and Saturday reading classes. Some teachers argued that students would not attend on weekends. Joe countered with a stronger plan. Teachers would visit every student's home to involve parents directly. Parents who struggled with literacy would also be invited to learn. In the weeks that followed, teachers and students worked tirelessly. Joe encouraged them with speeches and moral support, but opposition continued. Leona and the fire chief met with Mayor Botman. Frank and Rosenberg tried to defend Joe, but Botman dismissed their concern.
Please leave me alone now with Mrs. Barrett.
He struck a deal with Leona. He would fire Joe, and in return she would help secure his re-election. Later, in a government building restroom, Botman revealed to the fire chief that they would arrest Joe for fire code violations after the test. Neither of them realized Rosenberg overheard the plan. Rosenberg told Frank, and together they warned Joe. Joe responded by creating an emergency plan. If the fire chief showed up, guards would call Code 10 over the radio, and teachers would quickly remove the chains before any violations could be documented. During this tense period, Joan tried to update Joe on the progress of the remedial reading program. Joe brushed her aside, saying he was too busy and that she should handle it alone. His dismissive attitude left her increasingly frustrated. By the end of the day, Joan asked Joe for a transfer to another school. She said she was tired of working with an egotistical leader who mistreated those who could not fight back. She added that many teachers felt the same, but stayed only because they cared about the students.
And cruel, and it hurts, and none of them deserve it. They are sick of it, and so am I.
The next morning, before the big assembly, Joe handed Joan her transfer papers. He then addressed the students, speaking about the school's poor reputation in the city. He challenged them to prove they were better than the image people had of them. Joe also thanked the teachers for their dedication and gave special recognition to Joan for her contributions. Afterward, Mrs. Powers led the entire school in singing Lean on Me.
Times in our lives, we all have sorrow.
The students sang with passion, showing unity and pride. Joan was moved by the moment and decided to cancel her transfer request. She realized that Joe's methods, while often harsh, had brought real change. When exam day arrived, students worked with confidence. The atmosphere at Eastside was no longer the same. At the same time, the school board held a meeting. Leona grew impatient, and Botman gave the fire chief permission to secure an arrest warrant for Joe. Meanwhile, Kenesha revealed that she was pregnant. Her boyfriend denied responsibility, even though she insisted he was the only one. The situation deepened her emotional struggles. Joe promised to support her and explore options to help, but their conversation was cut short when security announced that the fire chief, Leona, and reporters had arrived. Joe immediately called Code 10 to remove the chains before the inspection. The fire chief, however, had evidence of the code system. Joe was arrested for fire code violations and taken to the police station, leaving Joan temporarily in charge. His arrest became major news. That night, the school board held an emergency meeting. Frank defended Joe, pointing to the school's progress. Leona countered by citing the low 33% practice exam result as proof of failure. The debate was interrupted when hundreds of students gathered outside, demanding Joe's release. They carried signs, chanted his name, and refused to leave. Botman realized firing Joe would damage him politically. Botman visited Joe in custody and asked him to order the students to go home. Joe refused. Botman threatened him, saying the police were ready in riot gear and violence would follow if the students resisted. Joe finally agreed to speak to the students, but only to keep them safe. Surrounded by guards, he was taken outside. Leona tried to sway the crowd, but the students booed her and praised Joe for transforming their school. They shouted that he was like a father to them. Joe was moved by their loyalty, but reminded them to stay calm and obey the law. At that moment, Joan ran forward holding an envelope. She announced that the official exam results had arrived. The school had reached the required graduation rate. They had passed. The students erupted in celebration.
That the students of Eastside High have passed the minimum basic skills test.
Joe turned to Botman and the state officials and told them to go to hell. He had proven that his methods worked. That night, students ended the historic day by singing the school song together under the stars. Eastside High, once marked by violence and despair, had become a place of pride and hope. At graduation, Joe handed out diplomas, offering each student personal words of encouragement. He gave them not only certificates but also faith in their future. The ceremony marked the peak of Eastside's transformation. So the moral of the story is, sometimes tough love and a loud school song can turn chaos into success.